Bill Russell, top 10 player, definitely one of the great, probably the greatest winner in the NBA history and one of the greatest defensive players in NBA history. So shout out that guy. He was legendary.
Civil rights activist, fought for change. And when Boston wanted to put him in the Hall of, when Boston wanted to retire his number, he declined because of the city of Boston was being racist. That's a strong move to do. And so
Huge.
A civil rights activist.
Exactly.
Yeah, a guy who fought for change, even when it was at the lowest point. And
definitely one of the most impactful players on and off the court, which is really huge for his legacy. So rest in peace. He had an awesome career. But yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode number 3. We're here. We're talking about the Western Conference 7 through 15. This is a part 2 to the part 1 we did about the Eastern Conference 11 through 15. But before we talk about that, Sam, you brought up something that you wanted to talk about that you saw on TikTok. I also follow TikTok sports podcast.
So earlier today, I saw this TikTok that I decided to send to Streaker. As soon as I saw it, that said there were going to be 6 players, right, that you could have on your team. And it was Shaq, Tim Duncan, was it Larry Bird,
Larry,
Kevin Durant, Steph, and Magic.
Yes.
And then, so the video said, who are you going to bench? And I was like, oh, well, this is, I have to think about this. But then the guy who was making the video immediately said, we have to bench Magic because he's a dinosaur. And I was like, hold on a second. So then I sent a Streaker and he says, low-key, I agree with that. We're going to start Steph. See, me personally, either KD or Steph is getting benched, or like maybe Larry. But I would want to keep Larry on instead of KD just for his defense, and because I feel like he can do more without the ball than KD can. Because personally, for me, the reason I want to bench Steph or something is because Steph can still be really good off the bench, coming in just shooting a bunch of threes and making them. Like we saw, and he could be like a shooting guard if he wanted to, and we saw him do that this year, like earlier in the Warriors playoff run. He was like dropping 30 off the bench. I mean, of course he was playing a lot of minutes, but that's 6 man of the year right there. But I think we would start Magic because then your team is not only like really big because you're putting like either KD or Larry Bird at the shooting guard if you're benching Steph, which is huge. Probably Larry Bird as shooting guard, and then you have Tim Duncan and Shaq, they're also huge. And then of course Magic, one of the biggest point guards ever. But like all of those other people are like scorers, and so you're gonna need someone to facilitate and pass to them. Like you're gonna want to find someone who can hit KD in spots where he can go into an ISO or where he can just do catch and shoot. You're gonna need someone who's gonna hit Larry when he's doing that thing that the Celtics always ran for him, where like both the wings go and then Tim Duncan and Shaq set screens for them and then they run out. Like that was a play the Celtics always ran to get Larry open, but then instead of that you have Larry and KD and then the best passer ever. So and then when like KD gets tired, or Larry gets tired, or even Magic, bring in Curry. See, that to me was the best solution. What about you?
Okay, so for me, I think Duncan and Shaq are locks. I don't think they're gonna
because
either of them are gonna come off the bench.
There's not an alternate big man. You can maybe put Larry or KD at power forward, but they just wouldn't be providing the same level of defense. No, Shaq, Larry's defense is good, but
yeah, because like Shaq plays center all his life. There's an argument if Tim Duncan is a power forward or center. I mean, he played more minutes under the center role, but we consider him as a power forward. I think both of them are locks. I think for me, Larry's also locked because when he played during his time, if you see his highlights, I felt like his style of play was ahead of his time. I feel like his style of play was definitely ahead of his time. So I think
it could succeed in like modern play, like even like just the way he shoots. But also like you have to say that he's just such an all-around player. Like I could see him easily, even if he doesn't have the ball in his hand, stepping into a role player because he's so big. He's a good rebounder. He's a good passer. He's a good defender. So really I feel like he can really mold into a lot of different roles.
Yeah. And then I think KD is staying on purely because he's a three-way scorer, and he's a scorer, and we need that scoring, I think. So I'm gonna keep KD, and I think I'm gonna put Steph on because although Magic does have that Magic is one of the greatest passers, if not the greatest passer of all time, I still want Curry on my squad because of his off-ball movement where he can create space for others. Like if you saw during his 2015-16 season or like his season this year, like his off-ball movement created space for big guys. Like
Okay, but hold on. Then if he's off ball, who's doing the passing then?
I think it
Who's
would be
Draymond?
KD.
Is
It would
Larry
be either
stepping? No,
I
no,
think it would
no.
be
Okay.
Larry or KD. Or not KD, but I think it would be Larry. I think Larry would be passing.
But I'd rather have like no matter who you have on the floor, I would rather have Magic. Like no matter who you put on the wing, I would always rather have Magic there. Like so, okay, if you're starting Curry at point guard, then I'd rather have Magic over Larry in that role because if it's Steph and Larry and KD on the wing, that's a lot of shooters. So one of them has to step into a role where they're setting up the other shooters and are going to play defense. Personally, I'm taking Magic over Larry as someone who can be like Draymond to Curry if we're going to start Curry and try to get him to that role. Because really, like, if we're talking about someone like Curry, if we're talking about the point guard not being the primary option, I want Magic. If you're talking about the point guard being the primary option, which is what you would have when Curry's in, is you'd have him be the primary option or similar to like what he was doing with KD. So
Okay.
like if you're gonna have Curry in, you're gonna want him to shoot. And then I would still start Magic because he's gonna be that guy who can play like Draymond to Curry,
Okay.
but like even better, and he can do more than Draymond can, you know? Because like if you look at people's all times lists, which of these players of these six do people have the highest on a lot of lists? Like what do you see?
I think probably Magic. I think Magic is the
For
highest.
me, Magic is in my top 5. And
Okay.
I don't think I
Okay.
could say that about those other players. Maybe Larry. But like
Larry. Okay.
I think Magic is like so good at basketball. And he's so good because you have so many great scorers in this lineup. And Magic is someone who can really fulfill the rest of that and like round out the team really well.
Okay. So who would you say you're coming off the bench? Steph, or is it Larry who you say it's coming off the bench?
I think it could be Steph or Larry.
Okay. I think it's either
if you want a more like versatile small ball team, you could low-key put Larry at power forward.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think KD
and then have
can go
Tim
in this.
Duncan off the bench, which would be crazy.
I think except for Shaq, I think everybody else has a case to come off the bench because of how deep each player is in the list. So I think other than
Shaq is just not
Shaq,
really like replaceable at that position.
Yeah, no. Like let's say if Giannis was in the mix, I personally would put Shaq off the bench because I feel like Giannis is
I'd put Duncan
overall
off the bench and put Giannis
better
at power
player.
forward.
Exactly. So but me personally, I think either Steph or Magic are the people coming up off the bench based on what type of ball you want to play and which position are you focusing on in your gameplay.
All right.
So
well, I think we both made good cases. Should we move into discussing the teams that finished in the bottom 5 positions, aka missed the play-in and playoffs this season in the Western Conference? Last video, we already talked about the New York Knicks, the Washington Wizards, the Indiana Pacers, the Detroit Pistons, and the Orlando Magic. Sort of the takeaway from that was that we like the future for the Pistons
and the
possibly the Magic, and then the other teams
have no senseless direction.
Some
we
of them,
don't know where they're heading.
I think the pace we think there are some moves they can make, but like the current direction they're heading now, we're a bit either negative about it or just confused about it. So
I think
but enough on the East. Let's get into the West. And you want to go from the bottom up?
Yeah. So at number 15, it's the Houston Rockets, who ended the season with a 20-62 record, and which is a 2.44 win percentage. At 14, you have the OKC Thunder.
The league. That's the worst in the league.
That was the worst in the league. Yeah. At 14, you have the OKC Thunder, 24-55 with a 2.93 win record. At 13, you have the Portland Trailblazers, who went 27-55 with a 0.329 win record. At 12, you got the Kings, who went 30-52 at 0.366 win record. At 11, you have the Los Angeles Lakers, who went 33-49.
Franchise of all time with LeBron. arguably the greatest player of all time. And
With
they
at a
missed the
.42.
playoffs.
At a .42 win record. Sam, let's start from the bottom up.
The
At
Houston
15, the Houston
Rockets,
Rockets.
who only got 20 wins this season. That's really disappointing. Okay, so looking, oh, Shumpert got arrested. Okay, so looking at this year, what I will say is that they were a really small team. And so their starting lineup, I believe it was Kevin Porter Jr., right?
Mm-hmm.
KPJ,
Jalen
Green, who, has a lot of flashes of potential. And then Eric Gordon at small forward. Then you have at your power forward, you have Jayshawn Tate. And then at center, Christian Wood. So you want to know what's the most glaring about that lineup? The height, because you're looking at, like an average size point guard and shooting guard, then Eric Gordon being your starting small forward. Like, I'm looking at this roster and there's not really like a lot of true small forwards. Like they have David off the bench. They have David Nwaba, who's 6'5". They had Jayshawn Tate, who was 6'4", but of course they're playing him at power forward, which is, strange. And you had, I guess they have Marquise Chris now. But they were playing, I think they were starting Eric Gordon, who's 6'3". So it's like a really small wing. And then if you have Jayshawn Tate, I mean, he's a great defender, but he is short. That defensively, to me, is like super concerning. Like I'm sure they finished close to the bottom in defensive rating.
So defensively, the Rockets were at the absolute bottom.
That's really not good. And I mean, but and then of course you could talk about rookie year Jalen Green, who was very, kind of raw in the beginning of the season, but started to pull it together towards the end, and now has like a lot of potential. Definitely potential to be a star. And now they've drafted Jabari Smith, who is a huge upgrade defensively in their big guys. So now I'm really liking and I think maybe you start Jayshawn Tate at small forward because Eric Gordon is, not really the same age as the rest of these guys. He's sort of, yeah. And they also have Kenyon Martin Jr., who I like.
I don't know. I think, I don't have much to say against this Rocket team. I didn't watch much of their games this season, but from what I looked at, I think that Jabari Smith draft pick is a plus side for them, a huge defensive push. I think this is like that Jabari Smith pick was like almost the opposite. Like for the Magic, they got Paolo, which is a huge offensive push. They got Jabari here, which is a huge defensive push for this team. I think Jalen Green,
shooter.
Yeah, still a decent offensive player, but I think his defense is what controls his game more. I think Jalen Green, another like you said, he was raw at the beginning of the season, but towards the end, he turned out to be a player with really good potential. 6'4". I don't know. I think when I'm looking at this team, I don't see much height. I feel like they're one of the smallest teams in the NBA.
Right.
I think look, they're starting 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", maybe Jabari Smith who's 6'10", maybe Boban who's 7'3". But I think at his age, I think he's going to be coming off the bench here. But I think looking at this team, I think the thing that holds them back is height. For me, I think.
Right. I think they do have, so Alperen Şengün is a promising prospect at center, but he's only 6'10". So I think realistically he could also be putting at power forward. But basically what I would say about this team is I like Jalen Green, and I think he's going to take a big step next year. I like Kevin Porter Jr. I think the same thing about him. So to me, that's a solid backcourt right now. And then with the addition of Jabari Smith, I say start Jabari, start Alperen, and have your vets like Schroeder, Marjanovic, I guess, and Gordon come off the bench, or and maybe even have them play more minutes if you see this younger team struggling, but really give minutes to your young guys. And then at small forward, maybe something like Jayshawn Tate, who, popular with the fans because he's such a dog defensively. Like he really is out there a lot of times guarding the other team's best player. Yep. Even if he's, smaller, he's very athletic and he is defensively minded. And that's really good to have on the wing next to someone like Kevin Porter Jr. or Jalen Green, who is a lot more about shooting, a lot more about the offensive side of the game. And then, and then I think in the future with their draft picks, they're going to try to get another big guy, probably. I would say maybe a taller center, and then maybe move then put either Şengün or Jabari Smith at power
Hmm.
forward in the future, depending on how they play. And I think they're both amazing prospects. So even having one of them off the bench is a huge plus. But yeah, I think they should get a more traditional center.
Oh
Someone
yeah.
else who is sort of a step ahead of the Rockets in their rebuild. The next team we're going to talk about is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yep. So we all know they drafted Chet Holmgren,
Yes.
7-footer who plays as a center position. I think when I see Chet's game, right, I think inside the paint, he's going to get I think inside the paint, he's definitely going to be bullied by bigger guys like Jokic, Giannis, Embiid. He's definitely going to get bullied in the bigger guys. But when he's in the mid range, and he's in the 3-point range, I think this is like a KD type player when he's in the mid range and 3-point range. Like when I saw his game in the summer league, who could not miss in the mid range and 3-point range. Like
No,
he's
he's definitely offensively, he's
potent.
definitely good. And I think defensively, um, I do like, okay, he's not a bad defender. Just the big hole is that he's so small, like not small, but like so frail. And so that's like he's a good shot blocker. And I think he has pretty good defensive IQ and he's so young and can learn a lot of stuff. But yeah, he's just so like he's 195 pounds and he's 7'1".
I mean,
But
like
I will say, someone who people doubted a lot, who was very skinny, lanky, tall prospect in the beginning of their career, who's really successful now.
I think Giannis. I'm thinking about
Giannis.
Giannis.
And now
I'm thinking
Giannis
about
is
Giannis.
jacked, dude.
I
So
was
like
just about to say that. Yeah.
Chet, I
Giannis
think
was
will always be
skinny.
a wiry frame because that's just his frame. Whereas Giannis was a bit like more broad-shouldered frame and had like, but I think Chet can put out some muscle and maybe force his way around the paint a little bit on the defensive end. But then on the offensive end, I think he can be stretched for sure.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, they could even they could low-key put him at power forward. But like the one thing I will say is that like right now you don't really have a young true center prospect. Like you have Derek Favors, who's so short and he's older, and then you have Muscala, who's old and frankly not that good in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then your main two prospects right now to be like your big guys are Pokusevsky and
Yeah.
Chet, who are both kind of stretch. So I think they do need a more traditional center. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, Chet is so raw and young. So
He reminds me of Giannis a little bit. He does. Of course, not
he's
with like the
different. Like
huge hype.
but like his play is different. But like in terms of like coming into the league with like his frame, but also his potential, like the
Mm-hmm.
doubts, but also the potential there. And then it's really like the same problem is that he's like, Giannis was skinny, he's skinny. So
When
I
I'm
think he
looking
could
at
be really good,
this,
and I think he could be the best player on this team, depending on how he
mhm.
develops.
I think looking at this team, the big three here is Shea, Josh
Sorry,
Giddey,
yeah.
and Shy, Josh Giddey, and Chet Holmgren are your big three here. Is when I'm looking at this team, and that's not a big team. That's not a bad team. Sorry, Shy
No,
from
Shea and
Kentucky.
Giddey are definitely like they have been the two really exciting parts of like the Thunder rebuild. Like even if they're not doing very well, people I think in OKC are really excited about
Mm-hmm.
Shea, and really excited about Josh Giddey. Shea being like, a bigger, more athletic point guard. I'm pretty sure he's a good shooter. And then Josh Giddey being a really big wing who is a great playmaker. And, he put up some points this year, but really he was so good at getting his teammates open and Shea putting up a lot of points this year. And then I think Josh Giddey to Chet will be like an iconic duo. And then someone who is really overlooked on this team, who I'm very hyped about, is actually Lou Dort.
I knew you. I was waiting for it. Yeah.
He got his bag. I'm really happy for him. I mean, he's clearly really wants to be in OKC. After he
Mm-hmm.
got his contract, there was an interview where he was like crying, talking about like how much it means to him to be on this team, which is crazy because they're really just such a young, not very successful team yet. But he's really, I guess he, wasn't ever a big prospect, but he's really found his place here, being a tough, sort of more muscly wing who is just a dog on defense and will be such a great role player piece for this team. And he's still so young. They're really good at they develop stuff down there in OKC, and I'm really excited for all these players.
Yeah.
And then, getting out of the starting five, You have so many other prospects. Like they might not all develop, but you know what? OKC has so many picks, it really doesn't matter. Like they just have,
Yeah.
they're just gonna be fiending, like they're feasting on all this young talent. Pause. But and then in the chance that they do end up needing a veteran, and the chance that these players really do develop, and they need to add, they need to potentially get a player from another team to like round out their roster, potentially some vets. They have the draft pack, the draft picks to do that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah, and at number 12, the Portland Trail Blazers.
only got 27 wins this year.
Whew.
Obviously dealing with injuries. Dame wasn't really
So
present this whole
here's their
season.
draft. They drafted Shaden Sharp. They drafted
Right.
Jabari Walker. They drafted Jared Roden, and they drafted Isaiah Miller, who went to UNC Greensboro.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So they drafted Isaiah Miller, and they drafted these 4 players. You got Damian Lillard, who signed that huge contract coming back. You got Gary
He's
Payton.
not running from the grind.
You got Gary Payton Jr., who signed from the Warriors after winning a ring this year.
That's
You got
huge.
Yusuf Nurkic. You got I'm just reading their list. Justice Winslow, Yusuf Nurkic, Drew Eubanks, Josh
They've got
Hart.
Jeremy Grant.
Yep. Brandon
So
Williams.
Dame, he's getting older and he really has something to prove. So I think this is maybe a bounce back season for Dame. I've always kind of been a Dame hater. I always hated when he was compared to
Dame hater. Really?
Curry. I hated when he was compared to Curry
Really?
because he's a good player, but I just think comparing him to Curry is just so silly. But right now, not Jokic, Nurkic came back, which is huge, and now you have Jeremy Grant. So that's probably the best front court this team has had in a while. I know they had Melo at one point, but
and CJ
he was
McCollum at
older.
one point too.
No, front court I meant. This is about
front court. Sorry.
With Nurkic, who is great when he's not injured. He's really great with Dame, and then Jeremy Grant, who is a really tall small forward. So I think he could play power forward if they need him to. And then you just have a load of wings. So I'm looking at right now for me is obviously Dame's going to start because he's their big star, and I think he will be for a while. And then you have Anthony Simons, who I am really up on. Anthony Simons. I think he's really good. Jordan Poole level kind of young player. Your third wing, I don't know. You could move Jeremy Grant to the wing and start one of your younger prospects like, Jabari Walker or something.
What about Josh Hart? What about Josh Hart starting? You got Josh Hart, you got Gary Payton, you got Shaden Sharp,
I would
Jared
start
Jordan,
Gary Payton.
those are
Josh
all
Hart
guards.
Because Josh Hart's good, but Payton brings so much defense, and I think that's something that you need with Dame and Anthony Simons because neither of them are exactly standout defenders. So I would start Gary Payton personally, but he's a bit small, so I could see them also starting Josh Hart. But now they got Joe Ingles.
They also, we can't forget, they also have Nasir Little from UNC, who
Nasir Little, I mean, he's he hasn't been great.
Yeah, who hasn't had the best NBA career, but yeah.
Well, his career has barely started, but yeah, I agree. He's only 22 though, so and he's really good defensively. So they could also start him at small. Or he could come off the bench at small forward, depending on how he develops. Especially as a defensive player, they could start him if they really wanted. But yeah, you're looking at a star backcourt with your big 3 being either, I think, Anthony Simons, Damian Lillard, and Nurkic, or Simons, Lillard, and Jeremy Grant. Because Jeremy Grant's, he's younger. Than
I think.
Nurkic. Or no, wait, Nurkic is younger. Hold on, I thought Nurkic was old.
No, he's just been dealing with injuries. Is 27.
Okay, well, yeah. So I think this is a pretty good team, but the thing is that Dame wants to win a championship, and he wants to win a championship with this team, and he's the one who's the oldest. He's 32, so he's running out of time in his prime, and this is not a championship team. This is a good young team plus an older star. And some players who've already developed like Josh Hart, Nurkic, and Payton, and who was I just saying? Jeremy Grant. So this is I don't know. He needs another big star if he's gonna win. to me because the West, like there are so many better teams in this one. To me, this could be like a pretty good play-in team, maybe even make it back to the playoffs in a few years. But like, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how the Simons. It's really like because like they got Jeremy Grant, like that's the big addition, and I
There's
guess I
so
have
many
Shadon Sharp.
questions.
So it really depends on how like their young, if their young guards are able to develop into a player who is able to make a backcourt fierce enough to like contend for a championship.
Okay, so our next team that we want to talk about before the huge finale with the Lakers is the Sacramento Kings. They went 30-52, and I think out of the teams that we mentioned, I think this is up there with teams that have a really bright future. Sam, you want to start off?
Yeah. I would. They have. I don't know if I would say how bright of a future they have. They have pretty bright future, but it's not like OKC level for me. So you have the Sacramento Kings, and you have a few potential all stars in Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. Sabonis was an all star at one point, but sort of a shoe in. Yeah, but Sabonis is really good. No sleep on Sabonis. And De'Aaron Fox is definitely on his way to being an all star. Such an explosive player. You lost Buddy Hield, who was one of your better shooters. We got back, right back Kevin Herter, who from the Hawks is an oversized guard with a really great shot, a really just beautiful shot. And you got Rashawn Holmes at your center, who's only 28, which is pretty good. He's 6'10". Not like your best prospect, but pretty good. And then you have Keegan Murray, your draft pick, who has shown so much potential in the summer league. So honestly, I think at this point, you could have Rashawn Holmes on the bench, start Sabonis at power forward, and then put Keegan Murray at start Sabonis at center because he's even taller than Rashawn Holmes is, and then put Keegan Murray at the power forward position, which is like his natural position. Oh no, what do you think?
Looking at this team, I understand what you're saying, but I'm looking at this bench depth like that: Jeremy Lamb, Malik Monk, Matthew Dellavedova,
Malik Monk.
Davion. They got Davion Mitchell, who they drafted from Baylor last year, who's a defensive menace.
Malik Monk off the bench would be nasty because that's how he was for the Lakers, and he was nasty off the bench. Like he was one of the better parts of their season last year.
Malik Monk looks like Kid Cudi.
Yeah, he does look like Kid Cudi, but in a disappointing Lakers season, he showed flashes of being pretty good, and he's young.
He's young.
So he
he's
could
only
come
24.
Off the bench. You could either put him or Herter off the bench, but I think Herter is just like a pure shooter, which I think would be good to have alongside De'Aaron Fox, someone who doesn't really shoot, and then have Malik Monk, who's a bit more versatile of a scorer than what did I say? Than De'Aaron Fox. Sorry, than Herter, like playing minutes, more kind of like the way that Herter and Bogdanovich worked on the Hawks, except with Malik Monk instead of Bogdanovich, which I don't know. I think Malik Monk's better than Bogdanovich. But then you also have, and then at small forward, I guess you would start Harrison Barnes still, who's like your vet, who's consistently been pretty good. Never been like all-star level, but he's been,
a good role player, solid.
A good role player who can score really well. So one of the better like vets around, one of the better vets who's not like really a superstar these days.
Okay. I think,
but then off your bench, Davion Mitchell is really good, right?
Yeah, like I said, Davion Mitchell is a defensive menace. He's a dog on defense. He's good. He's good on defense. So I think when looking at this team, I don't got much to say because I think this is a solid team, a great future ahead with future All-Star Keegan Murray, and I think De'Aaron Fox finally gets some help that he needs in Sacramento. Kevin Herter from the Hawks. I think this is a solid 35-win team. I don't know if they're going to sneak into the play-in. I think I'll give them 1 or 2 more years before they're a playoff play-in team.
They have some new pieces that need to fit into the system, and they have young talent. I think in the future, a big three of Sabonis, Fox, Keegan Murray sounds really solid to me with a backup of Herter, Malik Monk, like being backed up by Herter, Malik Monk, Harrison Barnes, Davion Mitchell, Rashawn Holmes, Jeremy. Like that's like a really great bench to me, a great bench and other starting role players.
And like if you think about it, Sabonis is basically Jokic but like a Walmart version. He does everything Jokic does. Basically a Jokic 2.0, but Jokic is just a step better than Sabonis, in my opinion.
He is like Wish.com Jokic. So
Yeah.
still really good, but just not like dominates the way Jokic can. But he doesn't need to dominate when he has good teammates like this.
Exactly.
So I think he can, he can be really good alongside
Fox and Murray.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this team has a good future. I don't know if their future is quite as bright as OKC, just because OKC has so many picks and just because there's just so much raw young guys that could turn out to be, really good. But I don't know. I mean, I do like the future for this team a lot, actually. So I think you could see them being good when like some of the teams who are in win now mode, like the Suns, sort of fall out. Like when people like Chris Paul get older, especially teams who have sacrificed a lot of picks, like the Lakers. Yeah, the Lakers and the Suns are the big ones I'm thinking of.
Okay, well, that was the Kings, and now comes the special team for the episode,
the Los
Angeles Lakers, who went 33-49 this last season, a failed super team. Let's start with the coaching first. They hired assistant coach of the Bucks, Darvin Ham, and he seems to be good. Looking at this team, this team, I don't know, man.
I think first of all, they need to win. If they're gonna win, they need to win in the next few years because, like, dude, look at Carmelo, 38, DJ Augustine, 34, Kent Bazemore, 33, Avery Bradley, 31. Then you have Troy Brown Jr., who's younger, Thomas Bryant, who's younger. Their draft picks.
LeBron James, 37.
Right. Wayne Ellington, 34. Dwight Howard,
Westbrook,
36.
33.
Westbrook, 33. So really, LeBron is running like a senior citizens home here. Like he's bringing back. I've said this before. Like a lot of these guys were like really dominant when he was younger. Like you have Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony, and you know what I'm thinking is like those were big stars when LeBron was a younger guy. And then even guys like Wayne Ellington, who was like he wasn't a star, but he was a pretty good catch and shoot guy back in the day. But like, yeah, this is really like a back in the day team. And I think like a big three of AD, LeBron, and Westbrook in theory sounds really good. But like I said, Westbrook's getting older and he hasn't really been the same player since the Thunder. He was pretty good on the Rockets. He was, better than people credit him for on the Wizards. But the Lakers, he's just been such a brick show. Like he's been building houses over there. And so I liked what Darvin Ham said about like he needs to change. He can't be OKC Russ anymore, right? Like he still wants to prove that he can be that guy, but like LeBron is that guy. Like you're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to be the athletic player who finishes at the rim, emphatically, can kind of shoot, and is a really great passer. But just like everything that Westbrook wants to do really well, LeBron is just is better at. So Westbrook needs to take his game in a different direction and kind of, like Darvin Ham said, go back to like how he was in his early days, being more of like a cutter, someone that LeBron can pass to, who can be a really great finisher, and then a defender. Because coming out of UCLA, he was like a great defensive prospect, but he hasn't really been a great defender ever since he's become like this, what now, OKC, or what was it? Why not OKC Russ? Like he hasn't really been, he's kind of been neglecting on defense, and this team needs, like with LeBron getting older, I think they need someone who can be a defensive dog. Because like Westbrook looks like he should be a defensive dog. And I think he can be because he has been before. So I think if Russell Westbrook is willing to take a step into being more of a role player kind of guy, that could fix the problem of like him being so awful next to LeBron. But like, I think this still would be better if they traded for.
See, for me, the thing is here, you have Westbrook and LeBron. Those are two ball dominant players. When two ball dominant players are together, it doesn't work. From what we've seen in the NBA, one of them has to change. LeBron is definitely not going to change. We know that. No. We've seen that last year, averaging 30 points per game. He's still the primary ball handler. Westbrook still dropped 18-7 and 7. But I think the environment he's in LA does not suit him. I think if he gets traded to one of these teams that we mentioned, or one of the teams in the East that need like that veteran presence who are still capable who still needs a capable point guard, that's okay. But at this point in the league right now, no team needs a point guard. No team needs a point guard. Every team has a good point guard. Every team has one, except for the Lakers. And I think I
Okay,
like
well
your
here's
idea.
here's what I'm thinking. Your point guard is LeBron. I mean, if you have LeBron at point guard, that's like a he's a top 5 passer all time, right?
Mhm.
So like that's not a bad deal to have there. For me, I was really keen on Westbrook being traded for Kyrie, but Kyrie was once great with LeBron, but he's just been so off the rails since he left LeBron that people thinking he'll immediately just shift back to because he's with LeBron, he'll shift back to the way he was. That doesn't seem like a guarantee to me. That seems
I
like
mean,
kind
we
of a
all know why
gamble.
he left LeBron in the first place. He wanted to
Exactly,
be
because
his
LeBron
home
is hard
star.
to play with. Like exactly, LeBron is
Exactly.
hard to play with.
He wanted to be a home
Um,
star.
so I think it would be best if Kyrie wants to do well. I think it would be best for him to be with LeBron, but I don't know if that's best for what the Lakers want. And he's not a team player. And the owner said in like a cryptic tweet that she wants someone who's going to put the team first, and that could either be alluding to Westbrook sort of trying to be ball dominant, or that could be alluding to Kyrie, like her not wanting to have Kyrie because he's such a selfish guy. But I think Westbrook has a better chance of changing than Kyrie. So I actually, low key, I don't know, keep Westbrook. I think he could change because I don't know. He seems like he's starting to become a bit more of a team player. Like he was one of the only players who showed up to Darvin Ham's press conference. And he was one of the only players, according to Max Christie, who was like reached out to him. Like he was like, yeah, I got drafted and Westbrook was the first one to reach out to me. And so I can see like Russ is maybe buying into Darvin Ham and being like, you need to be more of a team player and you need to figure out how to like do your job as a starter without being ball dominant because we need the ball to be in LeBron's hands.
And
And
he's
then,
still that guy without the ball dominant. Like we saw in the early OKC days when him, KD, and Harden were together and they had that huge playoff run to the finals. He was not the ball dominant guy. It was KD who was ball dominant
but he was
in
still
that
a dog.
in that run. But he was still so efficient that the team just worked well together.
So I think
So
if Russ wants to prove to everyone that he's still that guy and is still like OKC Russ, then he's looking for a trade to go to a team where he can just have the ball all the time. But if he wants to prove that he can win a championship alongside another star player, and if he wants to add like a championship to his legacy, like I think taking a step back and showing that he can go back to the way he was and still be good, I don't think that like for his pride that might, suck. But I think people would admire him for that. Like being able to work alongside LeBron, being like a very, while being a player who wants to play similarly to LeBron,
I
but
think
like being able to
in
change.
Westbrook's case, I think he's a top pick for a Hall of Famer. I don't think anybody's going to deny that he is a Hall of Famer if he ends his career
Right.
today. I think
But like in
to
terms
add
of
for his case,
like being one of the greats, a championship would be good, and I think he has a better chance here than like somewhere he would be traded.
I mean, like
I
if you
think
look like Charles Barkley, who's in the Hall of Fame, regarded as one of the best, right? And like not top 10, but like top 15, top 20, and he doesn't have a ring, but he's regarded as one of the best to do it. Like Westbrook, I think he's a top 5 ever point guard in my opinion.
top
I think
five.
yes, top
I
5.
think he would
Top
need a
5.
championship to. I think a championship would benefit his legacy, and I think being able to step into a new role alongside another player, um, is the right move for him. So I don't.
This team is old, man. This team is old. I think that's the only thing that's holding him
Right,
back.
but in terms of young talent, I think if this team wants to win a championship, LeBron can be your best player, but I think it needs to be a sort of a 1A, 1B situation with Anthony Davis, right? Anthony Davis is a more important player in this situation than Westbrook. Westbrook, Anthony Davis, and LeBron could be your big 3, but AD needs to like not
Stay
step up,
healthy,
but he
man.
needs to come back. He needs to stay healthy and come back because people are forgetting how good he is. Like he is so good when he is healthy.
When he's healthy, he's good. He's a top 5 power forward when he's healthy. But he needs to stay
He's like a
healthy.
top 3 power forward when he's healthy. He is insane.
Yeah. He's not better than
and
Giannis.
he was a huge part of the Lakers 2020 run. Like it wasn't just like people are acting like that, like LeBron carried them to that. No, it was LeBron and AD. They were both great. They were really what got that team there. There's that combo. And they can work really well together. So I think him coming back, Westbrook being able to step into that role, and then I don't know I think start Kendrick Nunn over Avery Bradley. I'm not sure where Avery Bradley's starting.
Mhm.
Like that's pretty decent. And then at center, I guess Dwight Howard, who's good defensive. Like he's still good defensively. But yeah, and then like even though this team is old, they do have some younger prospects like Troy Brown, Thomas Bryant, Scottie Pippen Jr. And then they got Lonnie Walker. So like if some of these older guys like Carmelo and Avery Bradley start to sort of regress, you have
Yeah.
these guys who you can develop. So I don't know if Darnham will be able to do that, but I don't know. He like his press conference has me hyped. So I'm excited to see what this team
I
can
think
do. Best case.
this team is, if they're all healthy and they know how to, like if they're all healthy, they know how to play their cards right. This is a 50-60 win team. Not a 60 win, a 50 win team. Like this is
I think they could be in the
definitely
50s. But it really there's two major factors. I don't think they need to trade Westbrook. I think if
no.
Westbrook steps into that role that we were talking about,
Mhm.
LeBron continues to be good, which I think he'll continue to be a top 5 player in the league, like we said. So if he continues to be a top 5 player in the league, Anthony Davis remains healthy, and Russ is able to step into that role, I think this is like a contending team, especially if you're able to, especially with Kendrick Nunn, because you remember he won Rookie of the Year. You remember that?
Mhm.
Like I feel people have forgotten about him, and he's pretty good. So I don't know. I think try to start him, and he could end up being pretty good as well. But
We're
like
forgetting
that
about
big
Austin
three
Reeves. Like
is contending,
Austin Reeves is definitely a great player off the bench. And
right?
if he is good enough to be in that starting role, like that shooting guard role, this is a solid starting five right here. And they have solid bench depth. And this I can see this team hitting easily a 50 win season.
Right. Like right. But the biggest thing is health of AD. And then another thing that we kind of neglect to talk about is that they're a terrible shooting team.
Oh yeah, no depth at all.
So I think something that would help is maybe seeing Austin Reeves develop, maybe bringing back Kendrick Nunn, who let me look at his like his career 3-point percentage is 36%, but like in the regular season it's 38. In the playoffs it went down, but like he's only played 4 playoff games. So I mean 38% regular season career 3-point percentage is pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. So that would bring some shooting to that team. Him, Austin Reeves, and then maybe if they were able to pick up or trade for someone like Buddy Hield, like just like a catch and shoot guy like that, or maybe even just like a 3-and-D guy to have off the bench, that would really benefit them to get like a bit of shooting, because right now they're kind of one of the weaker teams in that respect. But
Mhm.
I think that's less important than the health of AD and the role that Westbrook's going to play. But if all goes well, which is
Up in
the
the
chance
air.
that
It's
we'll
up
have,
in the air. It's
it's
definitely
up
up
in
in
the
the air.
air, then this could be a team that makes like a roaring comeback next season after a few
I
disappointing
think my
seasons.
final remarks for this team is everything is up in the air. You got old guys, you got new guys, you got um aging, you got like fresh blood. If they play their cards right, everybody stays healthy. The three things we talked about: AD being healthy, LeBron being a top 5 player, and Westbrook accepting that he won't be that ball dominant guy anymore. He'll be the guy who will be the who cuts. He'll be more in the backup role. I think this is easily a 50 win team pushing 60 if they know how to play their cards right. That's
For
just my
me,
concluding
this
remarks.
ceiling is a top 3 team in the West. So they have a really high ceiling. And the floor for me is what happened this year, not making the play in. So I think this is a team that has a lot of range. Like the other teams we talked about is like, oh, they'll make the play in a few years. Oh, they'll make the play in this year. The Lakers can either make a roaring comeback or be terrible again. It's just somewhere in that range. If they're like average in the middle, I don't know, whatever. But
Like you said last episode, or yeah, like you said, being average in the NBA today does not cut it. You either have to be, you're either bad or you're a superstar level team, like the Bucks, the
but
Celtics.
being bad for the Lakers won't benefit them as much because all their picks have been traded. It'll be good for the New Orleans if they're bad. But no, I think if all goes right, really good, and if it goes the way it did this season, which is definitely possible, not making the playoffs. So yeah, this is really a definitive season for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, I think I think they're in a win now mode, and I think this season is definitely going to define what they do going into the future.
Right, because if they're good, that could be another championship. Cementing the Lakers. Continuing to uphold the greatness of the Lakers franchise, cementing some legacies there, adding to LeBron's prestigious legacy, helping out Westbrook's and AD's. And if it goes wrong, we might see LeBron leave the Lakers.
Yep.
So, and that would be really bad for the Lakers.
That would be really bad.
So yeah, this is a team that I'm nervous about.
I am too. Got to look out for them.
Gotta look out for them, but I'm also nervous for LeBron a little bit. Like, I don't know if this will be good. We'll see. I don't know.
Okay, well, that was episode number 3. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment on our TikTok. What should be our next episode?
Exactly.
We'll read through the comments and follow the TikTok, subscribe, hit the bell, whatever. Sam, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, no, just let us know what type of video you want to do next. Definitely check out our previous videos, check out our previous TikToks, give us love there. I'll be looking out for comments on what you guys want to see next. We did a lot of current stuff. Maybe you want us to see us do something where we like kind of go back in history, like reflect on great legends. But yeah, anyways, that concludes episode 3. So yeah, like I said, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you want to see next.